I don't know what specifically exactly you want to talk about. I kind of remember what we were arguing about on Twitter. I kind of don't. We
Yeah.
were talking about for the people. That's
So
pretty
we were
much it.
talking about for the people. So I'm just gonna pull up.
I,
I'm not sure if you can see the screen that I'm sharing with you, but
yeah, I can.
you can.
I think that you just don't like. So that 501c that you found
Mm-hmm.
is not. It's not that. Like I don't know what that is. For are we recording right now? By the way,
We are recording.
we're
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
live.
Yep.
Okay. For the people, just so you know, is a mass organization initiative by a communist party. And now, to tell you that, I will say that the Communist Party that was backing every For the People organization in the United States recently dissolved and is currently in a reformation process. So I think that that's like a great thing because currently there's not very many great organizations in the U.S. or Canada. I think that there should definitely be reorganization and things like that. So these are not at all involved with the government. Sometimes they'll rent out a space, but they won't become a charitable organization or something like that because it kind of puts a target on your back. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So why?
The government will look and see where your funds are coming from. What's going on? What communists don't get funds through legal means. They don't get funds through we fund ourselves basically. We like there's no funding, you know what I mean? Like
Why should you hide your funding?
because okay, for mass organizations can have a legal aspect to it, but in terms of uh disclosing what you're doing to the government is not what you want to do as a communist organization. And so that's why those mass organizations don't do anything like that. And I am a member of one or a supporter of one of these mass organizations. I help out with one of them, not in America. I don't live in America, but they are nothing to do with any sort of charitable organization. It's entirely community led.
So
You know what I
so
mean?
what are I guess I'm still a little bit confused as to why you'd want to hide who's funding you. Because I can see a lot of reasons why that's a bad thing to hide who's funding you, right? Like I look at a number of sort of super PACs and I say, hey, like I want to know if the Koch brothers are responsible for paying for this ad. I want to know who's responsible for this. I see a lot of
Right.
drawbacks. I don't see what the benefit is if you're doing things that are positive for society in hiding where
So
funding is coming from.
all the funding comes through donations from the people, and I will say this: mass organizations almost never take cash donations for a reason. Uh, they basically do it to either if they do have a space, which most don't. For example, we don't have a space, so we don't have to pay rent. We will never ask for money, right? Unless we're raising money for somebody else. You know what I mean? For like a legal fund or something like that. Um, we will never ask for money. So funding doesn't really come in regular ways. Also, like obviously communist parties are clandestine, right? So you want to not draw any attention, like filing legal paperwork, like so as to explicitly state what your organization is, where it's located, put actual government names to it. That is not not what communists want to do at all. Clandestine is the way to go.
Why?
Because why? If you want to overthrow the government, why would you not want to be clandestine? You can't like it happens all the time where communists get purged. It's happened in the United States, in Canada, in well, basically 50% of the countries in South America.
Do you think it's easier or harder to kill someone who people know about?
Oh, it's much easier to kill somebody if
Really?
you
You
have
think that
paper documentation that's showing that they're
Wait, so are you saying
linked
that
to
you're saying
something.
that the government doesn't know who you are? You're saying that my point is not that like if you're framing someone who genuinely the government doesn't even know that they exist, maybe that's safer. But if you're saying that it's safer to have the government know who you are, right, but not have a backing, a support of a larger network. I think it's pretty clear that it's harder to kill the head of the
The government,
Habitat for Humanity than it is to kill some rando who no one's ever heard of, right? There'd be more of a public backlash.
okay, I'll let me explain it this way. When communists engage with their organizations, they don't even use their real names. You know what I mean? We don't use our real names. We like everything is secret. We call ourselves supporters of the organizations we are a part of because it is significantly safer. You know what I mean? We did like having number one fascists on the internet. I'm sure that me and you both share this concern, considering you're a left-leaning guy. Fascists, if you're a left-leaning person, you don't even have to be a communist like me. But obviously, if you're like a Maoist, you're going to be a pretty heavy target, right? Fascists scour the internet. They can find anything, basically, that they can find almost anything that the police can find. You know what I mean? They are just as, you know, they have time to kill digging on social media to dox you. You know what I mean? And they could do harm to you. They could do actual harm to you. So it's very important to be as secretive as possible. You know what I mean? So that being said, why don't you just have these ties with these like legal organizations through your aliases and stuff like that? Well, to a certain extent we do, but we don't necessarily want to engage in the same systems that every like organization we don't want to give into those bad habits, you know what I mean? But we'll still work with them tactically. We're always down to tactically work with anybody who is ideologically aligned with us.
Okay, so what exactly is your organization doing?
The organization that I support we have like a mass organization that in Canada we have Serve the People.
I'm not asking like the name of the organization. That's not so important to me. My question is like, what literally are you doing that's helping poor people?
Okay, we set up spaces for sexual assault and domestic violence survivors. We protect homeless encampments.
So let's take each of these piece by piece. So your first example is you're making women's shelters.
Yeah.
Okay. Women's shelters are a permanent location, right?
No, not always.
Okay.
Having a support network to support
Valid.
women doesn't mean actually physically building a shelter. Maybe
I agree. But presumably, you're trying ultimately to create a permanent shelter that is a place of refuge for people who are the victims of assault, right?
Maybe not under the current government would we be able to ever.
Well, there are women's shelters that exist.
Fully come out and create an actual, well, or maybe we could. I mean, there's tons of communist organizations that do.
There are women's shelters that exist under capitalism. You would grant that, right?
Pardon?
There are women's shelters that exist under capitalism that exist currently. You would grant that?
Right. But those a lot of those are not necessarily the greatest places, and I think that me and you.
I'm not asking if they're perfect. I'm asking if you think it's better to live in a women's shelter than to live on the street, because that's the option.
Sure. I would say that that's probably true. Okay. I'm not saying remove capitalist homeless shelters. That I don't think you'll ever see any communists say that.
You kind of did. You kind of said that Wikipedia is part of the system that is morally equivalent to Shell oil. I'm not sure if that's Shell or BP. Yeah, Shell oil.
I do think that Wikipedia is a specifically egregious example. Number one, because they don't call any all of their information on any sort of it's entirely biased. You can't go in there and update stuff about the Soviet Union or China.
You literally can. Here's Mao Zedong. You literally can. You can edit this. The whole premise of all of Wikipedia is that you can edit any page.
Right. And there's also an approval process, correct?
Correct. And how does that approval process work?
Isn't there like a moderation team?
There's a moderation team. Who are those moderation team people?
Those people.
No. Those people are self-selected. It's not like there's like an overarching body. There's the original founder, and the original founder has a process with everyone else who's working on it. And I don't even he has technically the ability to override, but he has not overridden anything that has been decided by the team of Wikipedia people who actually do the editing.
Quite frankly, I just
years.
don't. You'll never convince me that that's true. Like as like
I just don't know
he
how,
explicitly he's an explicitly.
I don't know how
like,
I'm supposed to argue if you just like when like statements of fact are told to you about nonprofits, your response is just like, I can't convince you of that. Like what
cool,
should I say there?
Okay, literally, I don't know. I probably said something in my tweets about how Wikipedia is a very useful tool for people like Shell Oil. Isn't Wikipedia like? I need to go back and read these tweets. Hang on.
Yeah, no worries. You said that Wikimedia is anti-communist as fuck, and they're run by a private board of directors with a bunch of ex-General Electric members.
That's true. Their board of directors is literally run by ex-General Electric people.
Why do you think it's relevant who's on their board of directors?
Because I don't think there should be boards of directors, buddy. Like, what do you mean?
Let me finish the question. Let me finish the question. Why do you think it's relevant when we're talking about the actual work that Wikimedia is responsible for in terms of educating literally millions of people across the third world, that the people who are funding it include people like me, but also people like General Electric? Why is that relevant?
I think that you're a complete sucker for donating to Wikipedia when they literally do have big, huge mega corporations donating to them all the time. I think that that's hilarious that you would do that. And it says,
do you think it's hilarious?
A lot about your priorities and a lot about your
wait. Do you think it's just like you're a sucker if you donate time or donate money to a place like Habitat for Humanity or to Doctors Without Borders or to any number of nonprofits, giant nonprofits that, yes, get money from corporations, but also do incredibly important work?
I don't think that. Okay, here.
Like, you said women's shelters is an example of work that you care about. I would be very confident that you'd have a very hard time finding any women's shelter in the country, either of Canada or of the United States, that hasn't taken money at one point or another from a capitalist that you deem to be problematic, and that frankly that I probably deem to be problematic, but simultaneously is absolutely an important women's shelter that is absolutely providing a real service to hundreds, if not thousands of women, right?
I don't necessarily believe that that's true at all. Personally, there's tons and tons of women's shelters that I actually know of that are anti-imperialist organizations that would never take money from literal bombing like companies that make fucking bombs. Like, I don't even know what to say.
You don't think that okay, let's zoom out a little bit. Do you think that it's possible to take money from someone who is bad but use that money to do a good thing?
Not unless you steal it. I think it's morally.
If McDonald's, which I think we could probably agree is probably a business, probably is responsible for some human rights issues, is responsible for blah 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 blah. If McDonald's is giving money from McDonald's to create the Ronald McDonald Charity and providing housing for people whose children are otherwise going to go homeless and otherwise their parents wouldn't be able to stay with them while they're going through incredibly important chemotherapy to survive, you're saying that that's not something that the parents should be happy that they got that money? You're saying those parents should just not take that money?
I'm not saying that parents shouldn't take free stuff, because listen, if you're poor, you're going to take free stuff and you're going to be happy about it, right? But you should recognize, like, oh, McDonald's is a terrible, terrible thing, right?
Right.
And listen, you're not even willing to go this far about Wikipedia. You're not even willing to say, oh, okay, maybe Wikipedia should be not. I never said we should destroy the information on Wikipedia. Never did I say that. I think that Wikipedia as an organization should be destroyed.
See how nonprofits,
their management structure completely abolished, taken out.
Okay, so when you say see how nonprofits aren't left wing, even I like the general concept of Wikimedia, but it's more than just a platform to get information. It's part of a structure of nonprofit organizations that fuck over people who don't live in America by killing and displacing them. Do you think Wikimedia is responsible for killing and displacing people?
I do actually, yes.
Wow.
I think that especially their management, literally General Electric,
I'm not
is
asking
their
about General
board of
Electric.
directors,
I'm not
dog.
asking about General
How does
Electric.
that?
I'm not asking about General Electric. I'm actually asking about Wikimedia. Do you think it's fair that you wrote that Wikimedia is responsible for killing and displacing people?
Yeah, they are actually
Wikimedia, not
directly
General Electric. Wikimedia.
responsible.
Wikimedia.
One to one, they are operated by the same people.
That's
Like,
not
does this not make?
accurate. That's just not accurate. I don't think you understand how a nonprofit works. That's not accurate. It's not like General Electric is like deciding what's on Wikimedia. And it's certainly not like General Electric. I mean, if you look at, we can look up the Wikipedia article for General Electric. I'm confident it has criticisms of them, right? Like I've not looked at this before, but let's just look at it, right? There is not fraud allegations, literally on the as soon as you search General Electric, the first thing you find, or I shouldn't say that, the eighth thing you find rather is the first thing you find is formation, blah 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 blah. But then you find fraud allegations. Here you go, right? It's not like that simply because they're taking money from General Electric.
Notice not a single word about how they do literal like vehicle manufacturing for the United States military.
U.S. military.
Do they?
Let's look up. Military.
Nope, not a single thing about any of their contracts with the United States military. Now, I wonder if we go to the Cuban version of Wikipedia.
Wait. That's not like, I don't understand how you can just like say things like as though they're not like, do you grant that there are things on this Wikipedia article that are anti General Electric?
Oh my God.
Do you grant that?
The fact that
do you grant it?
Okay,
wait. I just want to get no, do you grant that there are things that on this article?
There is one thing. You pointed out the singular thing.
It's not a
nobody's
singular
denying
thing.
that singular thing exists.
It's an entire section on fraud allegations and notice of possible SEC civil action. Like I don't understand how you can say
wasn't it? It's one pair. Click on it.
Thing.
Click on it. Click on it again. Click on it again.
Sure. Here you go. Fraud. All of this, then all of the insufficient reserves, right? All of that. If you scroll back up, you can find there's also this huge component about environmental record, their pollution record. Here's all of this stuff about the pollution of the Hudson River. Here's all of this stuff about the pollution of the Housatonic
I love
River.
this. I love this. This is great. I actually like this.
Here's all of this stuff.
This is a great point. This is a great point. These are all things that liberals care about. But they don't give a single fucking shit.
I'm sorry. So as a communist, you don't care about pollution? Is that your claim?
No, hang on. I care about pollution, but I actually care about pollution. Like I don't care about having green capitalism that is harmful in other ways. I care about like making sure
I don't know what you're talking about. Green capitalism. Do you care about pollution?
Yes. Who doesn't care about pollution?
A lot of people, actually, particularly a lot of tankies. A shocking number of tankies.
I am not a tankie. I'm a Maoist. I do not support China.
Okay.
I do not support China. Okay. I support.
You're just a Maoist. You only support them until the 1970s. They definitely didn't do anything wrong until the 1980s. You're totally right. Okay.
Nobody says that they did nothing wrong. Okay. Anybody doing that is not doing any more memeing than weird liberals do about Bernie. You know what I mean? Like.
Okay, so they did stuff wrong, but you define your entire ideology on behalf of Mao. But Mao wasn't a good person. Well, I'm a
Marxist-Leninist Maoist. I think Mao was a great person. I think he was one of the greatest people to ever live.
Okay, we could talk about that, but I want to stick on Wikipedia for a little bit. So you recognize that Wikipedia is saying things that are not in the economic interest of General Electric. It's not in the interest of General Electric to have their human rights violations, their pollution violations, their violations, any number of negative things that are pointed out in these articles in their Wikipedia entry. And that's clearly not in their interest, but yet it's being shown on Wikipedia. Why do you think that is? Do you think it is evidence that perhaps Wikipedia isn't controlled by General Electric?
Okay, I want to tell you this. It's because nobody's writing New York Times articles about how General Electric has a new $1 trillion contract with the United States government and putting it on Wikipedia. Okay, that's not how that works. All right, obviously people view that as a good thing and probably don't note it at all. You know what I mean? And so the idea that me and you probably view what's bad differently than what is presented on Wikipedia. Do you think that if you tried to go in there and make an edit talking about how their military contracts are harmful and how that's a controversy, do you think that that's going to generally be,
If it was fact checked,
that's actually going to be added? Do you think that that would happen?
If it was fact checked and backed up, then yeah.
Wow, I would love to see that. I would love to see that.
I just don't think you understand what Wikipedia is. Wikipedia is something anyone can edit it. The whole premise of Wikipedia is that anyone can edit it, and that when you edit it, there's a process by which it's shown that it's actually factual. You can't just make up random shit and put it on Wikipedia, but it's all actually like based in reality. There's actual facts that back up everything that's said on Wikipedia, and there's actual evidence. You'll notice there's a huge number at the bottom of every single list of Wikipedia articles. You will see literally, this has how many references? This has 221 references to this Wikipedia.
Dude, I don't care. I really don't care about this. I'm sorry. I really just
okay,
don't
so
care.
so you grant that you're wrong about Wikipedia.
I'm not wrong about Wikipedia. Wikipedia is entirely a cog in the system to...
It's a cog in the system that is directly arguing against General Electric, even though you think it's in the pocket of General Electric.
It's not arguing against General Electric because it has a couple of criticisms of them on their Wikipedia page about environmental concerns in a over 100-year-old company. It's 100 years old, right? Over 100 years old.
Wikipedia?
Correct?
Oh, you're talking about General Electric. I'm sorry. General Electric.
Like,
let's look it up. They are a company that is, it's an old company. I don't know. 1892. It's very old. Sure.
Yeah.
And so your response there is therefore when we're talking about the fraud allegations, which are from last year and this year, and insufficient reserves for long-term care policies, and their anticipated $8 billion loss upon disposition on Baker Hughes, and all of these others here, and then they go through their financial reports. They talk about the dividends. They talk about all of these different components. You don't think that they talk about bribery? I wasn't even aware of the bribery, but that's interesting. In 2010, General Electric was willing to pay $23.4 million to settle an SEC complaint as GE bribed Iraqi government officials. Wasn't aware of that. Now I am, thanks to Wikipedia. Right? Like, these are all a bunch of different components. The corporate affairs is not positive. It's not like pro-GE puff piece here, right? I think there are a lot of examples of puff piece work in the for-profit organizations that you can think of. You can definitely point out ways in which, certainly Fox News, certainly CNN, certainly MSNBC have done a lot of puff pieces for the ownership of their given markets, right? But I don't think it's fair to put Wikipedia in the same categorization as you put a bunch of just puff piece nonsense fake news.
Okay, let me just say this. Well, can we both agree that the inherent nature of nonprofits, like, it doesn't you can say that the material benefit of a nonprofit can be good, but its structure can uphold something bad. Do you agree with me? At least can we get...
Not even a little bit. I don't think that people giving money or giving
time... So you don't think the fact...
Let me finish the sentence before you interrupt. Okay. I don't think that the fact that people are consciously making the decision out of the goodness of their heart in a way that doesn't benefit them to give money or to give time to a non-governmental organization, right, that is explicitly and exclusively allowed to do things for the public that aren't allowed to profit. That's the whole premise of a nonprofit from the actions that they're doing. I think that is definitely, at a broad scale, good. Are there individual nonprofits that have done fraud, that have done abuse? Of course there are. Have they made mistakes? Yes. But at a writ large basis, am I comfortable just shitting on the existence of nonprofits? Absolutely not.
So look, I want to ask you something. Do you think that it's okay that these nonprofits pay people wages? Do you think that that's okay?
Yes.
Okay, I disagree with you entirely. So it's just a fundamental difference.
I thought you
of
were
our understanding of Marxism.
You're against... First of all, I'm definitely not a Marxist. I don't know where you got that. But I don't know how you can possibly call yourself a left-winger when you're against paying people for the work that they do. Like, do you think every single university that is even remotely at like a medium scale caliber is a nonprofit? Do you think that no professor in America should get paid? They're all nonprofit. I go to Carnegie Mellon, nonprofit. Harvard, nonprofit. Yale, nonprofit. Every Ivy League is a nonprofit. So too is literally
What
every
a positive organization those are, eh?
I'm
What a
asking
positive organization.
I'm asking if the literally thousands of professors across the country deserve to get paid, and your response is I don't like Yale.
Should be paid wages. I don't think anybody should be paid
Okay,
wages.
sweetheart, we live in a capitalist system. People need money in order to survive.
I want to change that.
Okay, awesome. That's kind of an interesting conversation.
The fact that you don't,
that's a moderately interesting conversation in the abstract. But wait. But in the meantime, do you think that like people who do work that is beneficial to society, that, and I know you don't care about education, that's fine, but I do care about education. I do care that people at Wikipedia are able to make a living. The vast majority of people who provide work for Wikipedia don't get paid, but some number do. They have a staff, I think of like maybe like 100. It's a tiny staff comparative to any other website of their size. But yeah, there are some people who get paid. There are some people who get paid at schools. I don't know why you're against that.
Okay, let me just put it this way. If you are against wage exploitation overall, the structure of that wage exploitation does not change, and the process like of that money going through, because 99% of this money is not coming from users of Wikipedia. Like, it's really not. So like,
okay,
like this, it's just so fucking stupid. It's fucking stupid. I lost my train of thought.
Okay, so that people get paid is stupid.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why?
Okay. Listen, I think that people should do individually what's best for themselves, but the structures at the top, I don't support petit bourgeois business owners. I don't support small business owners.
I'm not asking about the structure at the top. I'm asking if, given the structure exists, there's a difference between Wikipedia and Shell Oil, which you explicitly said that there isn't. You explicitly said that they're the same and that they're all part of this overarching hatred and they're trying to kill and displace people.
Yeah, I do think that.
Okay, so there's no difference between Wikipedia and Shell Oil.
Hang on. Okay, to their employees, there's zero difference. Both of their employees are being exploited, and both of them are currently existing inside of this system, right? One of them literally displaces indigenous people and slaughters them. Shell Oil has done this for decades and decades. Well, it's not controversial, right? And Wikipedia, literally General Electric board members, literal war criminals on their board of directors. Like, the fact that you can't see that these systems are interrelated, the fact that you can't see that they're like these nonprofits only exist to build up these weird billionaires' portfolios.
Okay,
and
okay.
like allow these charitable
Let's
donations
unpack this.
to happen.
Okay, so here's the list of their donors. These are the 50,000 plus donors, right? Okay, so Apple, I assume you hate. I assume some of these people you don't know. Awesome, right? But these are the only organizations that give more than 50,000. Okay, Microsoft. This is not Microsoft the company. This is the matching gifts program, which is to say that it's a bunch of individual people who work at Microsoft, and rather than taking a salary, they have a matching gifts program. So immediately you're sending in your money rather than getting $100,000 as a salary. You take 80,000, and they will match it. So they'll give 40,000 rather than just 20,000 as Microsoft as the company to this nonprofit, right? So I don't know why you're laughing at that. That's
hilarious.
Why is that funny?
You're allowing your company to garnish your wages and donate them to a company that's also
it's not a company.
Wages.
It's a non-profit. Do you think that just like
there's no difference to me? I'm sorry.
Okay. Let's zoom. Okay. What should I do?
The leaders of Wikipedia get paid more than the people at the bottom, correct?
Do you think that the people who are working at Wikipedia, who built Wikipedia, which is like the third largest, fifth largest website on Earth, you don't think that they could be billionaires if they wanted to? They made the conscious decision, instead of making this a for-profit organization, to make it a non-profit organization. There's a huge difference between Wikipedia and Google.
The guy
fact
who
that
owns
you can't see
Wikipedia
that
is
is
already a
insane.
millionaire.
He's a millionaire.
He's
He could be a
already rich as fuck.
billionaire. You're right. He's worth like 20 million. That's a lot of money, for sure. He could be worth 20 billion easily without like having changed anything in his life other than making Wikipedia for profit, which would have made an extraordinary difference in literally millions of people's lives comparative to the fact that it's a
Wikipedia is only popular because it's nonprofit.
That's flat out
like, because you don't have to pay for it. I'll say it that way.
You don't pay for Google, and yet it's still extraordinarily profitable because they take advertising money, because they've made the conscious decision to sell your data, because they've made the conscious decision to blah, 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 blah. All of these things that have made them billions of dollars comparative to Wikipedia, which is entirely nonprofit. This guy has literally not made, I don't know why that's like funny to you.
Dude, it's just so funny because it's literally like you pull up this thing with like Apple and them paying them, and it's like, I can't take you seriously. Like, I seriously
what should you do if you care about the country or you care about the world?
What should you do? You should join an organization, a communist organization. You should be
and do what?
Getting in your community. You should be participating in your mass organizations. You should
stop. You haven't said anything yet. You haven't said anything. You're just saying join a group. I don't give a shit about the group. I care about what the group does. What do you want me to do? Should you, for example,
you have a mass organization?
I actually have a nonprofit. Yeah, it's not my personal nonprofit, but I'm part of multiple nonprofits, actually. Yes. However, the question is very simple. Should you, for example, provide education to people? Oh, would you look at that? That's what Wikipedia is doing. That's what a bunch of nonprofit organizations, colleges do that you laughed at. That's what a huge number. How about you provide housing to people? Oh, would you look at that? Habitat for Humanity does that, but you don't give a shit because they're a nonprofit. How about you provide, any number of extraordinarily important things for society? They're all done through the nonprofit or through the governmental system. That's how action takes place.
Dude, I seriously could not care less about these tax write-offs.
They're not a tax write-off. They literally save millions of people from not becoming educated. I don't know how you can just say that when build schools in Africa, that's useless, okay? It is such a pathetic and first world action. Just be like, who gives a fuck?
Do you think Bill Gates should be in Africa?
What do you think
Bill Gates should be in Africa?
Do I think that broadly it's good that the people who are providing
the most... Wait.
Let me answer your question. Let me answer your question. Do I think that it's good that we have a system by which there are incredibly huge numbers of people who are forced into slum conditions across Lagos, across Lilongwe, across Cape Town, across Joburg? Of course not. I think that is absolutely reprehensible, and it's extraordinarily dangerous, not just for the people who are living it, but for the entire worldwide community, because I think that it's going to result in disease festering at a level that we've never seen in the history of the world. Absolutely, I think it's absolutely reprehensible, and I think that if anyone is doing work to stop that, that's good.
What did you hang on. Let me just logic through what you just said.
Go for it.
Did you just say that you are scared that the third world is dirty and
I said that
I'm scared.
I said that I'm scared that when there's not enough water filtration in Lagos, the result of not having enough water filtration in Lagos is that millions of people will die. Okay, he ran away. That's interesting. I think it is very frustrating that I'm not able to have conversations with people who are on the communist side of the world. I shouldn't say communist, who are specifically on the totalitarian communist side of this of the argument, and just refuse to even attempt to have a conversation about how they're actually going to help people. When I asked him how he helped people, his response was, oh, you should join an organization. And when I asked, what does the organization do? His response is, well, it certainly isn't involved in, anything that's bourgeois. It's certainly not involved in education, because fuck all universities. It's certainly not involved in education at a more decentralized level, so fuck Wikipedia. It's certainly not involved in, trying to house people, so fuck Habitat for Humanity. It's certainly not involved in trying to get people access to medical use, so fuck the Doctors Without Borders. It's certainly not about trying to stop. When I talked about, like, hey, it's a real problem that there are millions of people suffering across the third world in slums, his response is, hey man, did you say that the slums are dirty? Yeah, you're fucking right, I did. Absolutely right. There are 100% dirty places across Nigeria, across South Africa, across Malawi, across Zambia, across any number of countries. By the way, all of those countries I've named, I've been to. But beyond that, it's important to recognize that there is a huge problem across the third world, and the way to solve it is literally anything that you can do to solve it. Okay? I don't care about ideology more than I care about people. And it's extraordinarily frustrating that when I try to have a conversation about, like, how you can help people, his only response is join my club. That's not a response. You have an obligation, if you're going to call yourself a left-winger, you have an obligation to protect society writ large, and to protect society writ large requires that you actually take real action beyond just joining clubs.